Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And we have a returning guest today who appeared back in November 2021. So just over 2 years ago, which was episode 186. Alistair Waddell, who's the president and CEO of Inflection Resources and chairman of Headwater Gold, who are both junior explorers working across Australia and the US, focusing on high-grade precious metals and copper assets. Alistair is an experienced exploration geologist by background, with experience in early-stage opportunity recognition, expanding from greenfields exploration to feasibility studies, working for the likes of Kinross in obviously early in his career. He has solid commercial capabilities in capital markets, and he's going to give us an update on both of the companies. Give us an update on the projects and what the future holds for both companies. And also going to be speaking about NewQuest Capital, which is an umbrella company overseeing these other two companies, Inflection Resources and Headwater. So with no further ado, that's welcome Alistair to the podcast. How you doing, Alistair?
Very well, Rob. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah. Appreciate your time. Obviously, we've spoken before then, but 2 years ago you were on the podcast. So for those that didn't listen to that previous episode, appreciate if you can go and have a listen. And obviously you can see how far both companies have come since then. So just wondering, if you just give us an overview of your career for those that don't know you, although I'm sure a lot of people listening do know you.
Sure. So exploration geologist, originally from the UK, although left the UK pretty much straight after graduation. Went out to Australia, worked early stage exploration, focused on diamonds before moving over to Latin America in the mid to late 90s. Bounced around a little bit between sort of Bolivia and Venezuela, and lived in Peru for a number of years. Before moving to the Dominican Republic, I set up a junior exploration company there called GoldQuest Mining back in 2001 with a couple of former Anglo Gold colleagues of mine. Did that for the best part of 10 years, which brought me first time to Canada. Lived in Canada for a number of years, then got pulled back to South America, as you mentioned, joining Kinross Gold, and went down, lived in Ecuador for a period, managing their Fruta del Norte discovery in southern Ecuador. And then 3 years in Chile, looking after exploration for South America for Kinross before moving back to Canada, looking more of a global greenfields, new opportunities type role, but all on early stage exploration for the most part, with a bit of brownfields exploration around various mines and whatnot. But and about 4 years ago, set up the precursor to NewQuest Capital, which we'll get into a little bit, but it was the sort of the parent company to a number of these different ventures. So my day job is running a company called Inflection Resources, which is a copper gold company focused on exploration in New South Wales, Australia.
Yeah, so obviously, wondering if you can just give us a quick update. Obviously, since we last spoke 2 years ago, wondering if you can give us an update on Inflection Resources. And I wonder if you can just provide a little bit of background to the company and any sort of updates on any developments since we last spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. So Inflection, it's focused on large-scale copper gold exploration in northern New South Wales. We're focused very much on the earlier stage, the greenfields exploration, but we're exploring a belt of rocks called the Macquarie Arc, and this is a belt of rocks that hosts some very big mines. The big one in the belt is Cadia. This is formerly Newcrest, now Newmont Mining's sort of flagship operation in that part of the world. It's a very large copper gold block cave mine. There are a couple of others. There's Evolution Mining's Cowal deposit, and recently acquired North Park's deposits as well. These are big copper gold deposits. And to cut a long story short, Rob, this belt of rocks, a sort of a north-south trending belt, disappears to the north under a blanket of sedimentary cover, masking the underlying geology. And a few years ago now, we partnered up with a gentleman called Dr. Douglas Haynes, who's been a very successful explorer in that part of the world and elsewhere. And ultimately, Douglas built a beautiful interpretive geological map extrapolating the known geology where it outcrops in the south, which hosts these big mines, and he extended the geology underneath the cover sequence using a regional magnetic survey. And in doing that, he identified about 35 very large targets in the magnetics, in the geophysics, that he considered analogous with these very large mines located further to the south, but obviously with a blanket of sediment sitting on top. So we've been systematically drill testing very large geophysical features, looking for these very large copper gold porphyry deposits. These are what we call alkalic porphyry systems. These are got a distinct form. They call them pencil porphyry, sort of very vertically extensive types of systems. But the challenge is exploring for these things under the sediments because of their form and nature. So that's sort of the background. But I guess since we last spoke, Rob, the major development is we partnered up with Anglo Gold Ashanti, and we entered into a large-scale agreement with Anglo Gold, where Anglo Gold is funding us to explore these targets. We've been able to tie up the entire belt where it was covered with the sediment. So it extends over about 300 kilometers, so over 7,000 hectares of ground. So it's a very, very large land position, and it basically equates to about 60% of the belt that is under our control, all of which is 100% owned. So with this, I think that was really the secret to getting Anglo Gold involved. We also had a little bit of joy with the drill bits, where we hit some really strong alteration, suggesting we're in close proximity to one of these systems. It's a whole story around that, but we haven't yet drilled the big Boomer discovery hole, but we've got a lot of smoke, and I think it was this sort of smoke in the form of favorable alteration and geochemistry, etc., that was really attracted Anglo Gold. And they've been great partners to work with to date. And we've just started a large-scale exploration program. It's probably going to take a number of years to fully execute. But that's sort of where we are today, Rob.
Yeah, no, that's a good result, getting them on them board. Were you obviously in conversations with them for a long period of time?
Yeah, we've known the sort of the principal person at Anglo Gold for quite a while now, and we've always set up this company with the goal of bringing in a major mining company as a partner. We are looking for very big porphyry type deposits here. So it was always the plan to bring in a partner, and we set the company up with that in mind. But yes, it's a lot of what we do is speaking with the major mining companies on a constant basis, just updating them on what we do and how things are going, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Move on to your other project. Obviously, you're the chairman of Nevada-focused gold explorer Headwater Gold. What's the latest developments from Headwater, and what has happened since we last spoke as well?
Absolutely. So Headwater Gold is a US-focused gold explorer. In this particular case, Headwater is looking for high-grade epithermal veins, very specific focus. We believe, that there's a good market for those types of projects. We've tried to steer away from sort of the low-grade disseminated projects or the Carlin type projects. We think if you could find a nice high-grade epithermal vein project or field, there'd be a number of suitors that would certainly be willing to take on a project like that. So it's got a very clear focus and strategy, and a little bit like Inflection, was able to acquire a number of big projects on open ground. And this was kind of the key. We're not dealing with third parties for the most part. A lot of these projects are, well, all of them are royalty free, and there's no underlying deals as such. So it's a very, very simple, clean story. So Headwater Gold attracted a partner in the form of what was NewQuest Mining. Now Newmont, after NewQuest were acquired by Newmont recently. But ultimately, it's had a very busy sort of 12 to 18 months working with Newmont, and drilled a large number of projects throughout the year. I think there was 6 rigs turning on five projects last summer. So it's been very, very busy. The guys on the ground have been running around looking at new things as well. But really, our focus would come onto the project. It's Spring Peak. And this is adjacent to Hecla Mining's Aurora project. This was a historic gold mining camp that produced very, very high grade gold. And Headwater has essentially acquired a lot of the ground in and around that sort of broader district, and had quite a bit of joy drill testing a number of targets in that vicinity, and got some nice high grade intercepts as well. So focus really has morphed towards the Spring Peak project. That's the one that's really risen to the top of the portfolio. But ultimately, it's a lot of different projects ongoing, and lovely to have a partnership with Newmont Mining there.
As mentioned in the introduction, Inflection and Headwater are both part of the NewQuest Capital Group of companies. I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about NewQuest and and the setup of the company.
Yeah, so NewQuest is sort of the umbrella company to all of our various exploration ventures, but it's really sort of a group of like-minded individuals that really believe in sort of more earlier stage exploration. And we've been able to finance our various companies that we put together. But we got a sort of broad mix of experience from the sort of the capital markets to the technical end as well. And we sort of complement each other, sort of 4 partners there that work under the NewQuest umbrella. But ultimately, it's incubated a number of different companies. The 2 we mentioned already is Inflection and Headwater Gold, but we've also got a number of others. One other public company that's under the NewQuest umbrella is Red Canyon Resources, and this is a recently listed company that's focused on copper exploration, particularly in the US and Canada, and it's got projects specifically in British Columbia, Nevada, and Utah. And that's got its own management team. All of these companies have their own independent sort of management teams around them, but ultimately the capital was provided by NewQuest. And then we've got 2 private ventures. We've got Finex Metals, which is targeting gold and nickel in far northern Finland. And that's a predominantly Finnish team. So that company's still private and just ticking along a little bit in the shadows. And then we have our latest venture is Conduit Nickel. And this is headed up by a gentleman called Phil Szymanski, who is a very well-regarded expert in nickel sulfides. And that company's picked up a very large land position in Manitoba. So they've got a similar theme. All of these companies, ultimately, we like to acquire everything through staking, picking open ground. We're somewhat reluctant to do third-party deals unless it's a very compelling argument to do so. But really, it's big district-scale land positions, great jurisdictions, quality geoscience. And that's the idea is really we can share a lot of the sort of the corporate costs as well. So we keep our costs down at a corporate level in terms of office and CFO and corporate secretary, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of benefits for having sort of an umbrella group to sort of oversee all of these various ventures.
Yeah, certainly. When NewQuest finances new exploration ventures, what criteria are you looking for to select particular projects and jurisdictions? Have you got a sort of set criteria that you run all your projects through?
We do. I mean, they're not hard and fast rules, but I mean, it really comes down to sort of first principles targeting for us, and the big one being, I mean, ultimately, where do the major mining companies want to own their assets in the long term, and what types of deposits are they ultimately looking for? This is a really important point. I mean, we're in the business of finding things, and we're providing things for the major mining companies. So we ask ourselves that very question from day one, and really, it's like Inflection's a great example. We want the major mining companies are really looking for very long life, large copper gold deposits. Well, where do they want those? Well, they probably want them in sort of mining friendly jurisdictions, the US, Canada, Australia, et cetera, Chile. So really, it's first principles. Where do they want the assets in those long term? And then you sort of go the next level down. Well, if you pick a particular belt, like so you use the Macquarie Arc in New South Wales. Well, how many tons and what sort of grade do they need to see to make a project viable for them? And does the belt of rocks have the potential to host a deposit of that scale? I mean, these are the key things. It's not a killer. If the belt doesn't have a big deposit, it could still potentially have one. But we've got to believe that the belt has the scale to host a big deposit. And again, this is a really important point. The deposits have to have scale to move the needle for the major mining companies. So we love testing targets that have got oversized sort of risk reward. We're very comfortable taking technical risk for a relatively modest amount of capital if the reward is potentially very large. So if we can drill a hole for $100,000 and test a target that's got the potential to deliver a tier one discovery, that's right up our alley, and that we're really big believers in that sort of strategy. We also look at things like, can we acquire a district scale land position in a particular part of the world? So again, Inflection, sort of conduit, this would be a great examples of that. We want a large, we'll call it search space, where we've got the potential to sit back a little bit and systematically explore a much larger area. We want to be able to own 100% of things with no third-party deals and no royalties. And these are all big, important points that the major mining companies look for. It's no good having a tiny land position and ultimately, a lot of underlying royalties and things like that. So these are big points as well. Another key point for us, and this is a real fundamental one as well, is testing targets have not been drill tested before. And as you know, a lot of the projects that are around have been drilled many, many times before. And invariably, the majors will have looked at these things. And this is not always the case, but often the case. Once these targets have been drill tested, it's sort of a, diminishing returns from that point onwards. If you haven't made a major discovery, the odds of making that discovery just get increasingly less the more it's drilled. So we love drilling big targets with the potential for big discovery that have not been drill tested before. So it's kind of a fundamental problem. And this point of drilling prospects that have been drilled many, many times before, I think it's a problem for the industry as a whole. I mean, invariably these majors have been through these, not always the case, but there's often issues with metallurgy, lack of size, grade, could be social problems, environmental concerns, things like this. So that's a core point for us, drilling projects that have not been drilled before.
Yeah. Talk about obviously financing. Obviously 2023 was a very, very difficult year for junior mining. And obviously a lot of companies were struggling to raise finance. How do you see the market in 2024? Do you see things picking up? How have you sort finance? Obviously, you mentioned you've obviously got a big miner coming in and helping you, but how do you see the financing in 2024 for yourselves, and I suppose the junior market space as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, I mean, I was kind of hopeful that we'd see a little bit of a pickup at the beginning of 2024, but it hasn't really happened. If anything, it's actually got slightly worse, maybe. And there's a real disconnect here. I mean, you know, the metal prices, for the most part, are doing very well. A lot of the major mining companies are producing a lot of good free cash flow. So there's a bit of a disconnect between the majors and the junior sector, and that particularly that early stage risk capital. So it's a real problem for the junior explorers. And you know, we've in some ways sort of mitigated that risk. We've got some fantastic shareholders in our companies that really understand the long-term nature of the business and that are there in the long term. And that's been a really key point, particularly in Inflection and Headwater. You know, these real quality investors that are not flipping shares at the slightest whim in the market. So we've got some great shareholders, but as you sort of mentioned as well, we've also brought in two major mining companies into Inflection and Headwater in the form of Anglo Gold and Newmont. So that's really enabled both those companies to do a massive amount of exploration and drilling, perhaps when other groups have really struggled to raise capital just to even just sort of keep the lights on, if you will. So I think that's key. I mean, you know, it's ultimately the goal is to find assets for the major mining companies. So to partner up with them early on has been really a boon for our group, and it's worked out very, very well. And we're busy last year, and we're going to be busy this year doing lots and lots of drilling in the US and Australia in particular.
Yeah, and obviously you're working in a few different jurisdictions. Obviously Australia, the US, and even Finland. What are the major differences you see in mining in those different jurisdictions?
Well, they've all got their own nuances for sure, but I mean, for the most part, you know, the US and Australia, easy places to operate in many ways. I mean, mining's well understood. I mean, this is one of those key criteria I was sort of mentioning a little bit earlier. And same with Finland as well. I mean, it is a mining jurisdiction. You know, we're not exploring areas that, you know, perhaps challenging to encourage a major mining company to go to. So for the most part, I mean, we're just like to operate in places where mining's a known quantity, perhaps identify opportunities within those jurisdictions that are perhaps unrecognized or unloved or forgotten about as much as anything. So yeah, we want to be able to, as you say, go to bed at night and wake up knowing you still own the assets in the morning. Now, you can't mitigate that risk completely, but certainly where you explore is one of the real risks you can actually control. So that's a key point for us.
Yeah. What are the primary reasons why someone should consider investing in the NewQuest Capital Group of companies?
Yeah, I mean, we've really, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I think we typically own 100% of our assets. They're invariably royalty free. We're in jurisdictions that we know the major mining companies want to own their assets in. And, you know, I think that key point I mentioned earlier about drill testing very large targets that have not been drill tested before. I can't stress this enough. You know, I think you're getting a real opportunity at a full exposure into some new discovery, particularly ones that have never been tested. So using Inflection as an example, you know, we're drilling these very large geophysical targets in New South Wales that have never been touched with a drill, and it's a very exciting ride for both, you know, for myself and for our investors. I mean, you're getting exposure to a bit of the unknown, but whatever's down there, I mean, it might be a complete duster of a hole, but it's got the potential in terms of scale to deliver something that will appeal to the major mining companies. So, you know, I think we've mitigated a lot of the risk by bringing some of the major mining companies in already. You know, like for example, Inflection and Headwater no plans to raise capital anytime soon. And, we'll say the quality of the jurisdictions, the scale of the targets, and you're really just backing the teams, I think is the key as well.
And lastly, what's the outlook for the next sort of 6 to 12 months with both Inflection and Headwater?
Well, it's drilling all round. Inflection is we're part of a multi-year exploration agreement. We've essentially got a phase one program now where Anglo Gold's investing 10 million Australian dollars across the entire portfolio of targets in New South Wales. So we're approaching the halfway mark on that. Once they finish that 10 million program, they then retain the right to select to 5 projects whereby they can earn incrementally amounts in up to 5 projects by spending a significant amount of capital before delivering a pre-feasibility study. So Inflection is going to be very, very busy with the drilling. We've got 2 drills turning right now. Hopefully that will increase here as the year progresses. But Inflection is all about drilling at this point. And same with Headwater. Headwater is obviously funded by Newmont Mining. And that's going to be drilling. There are a number of projects there which will be drill tested during the year, but with a real focus on this Spring Creek project adjacent to Heckler's Aurora project there. So a lot of drill news flow coming from those 2 companies.
Yeah, well, all the best for 2024. If our audience wants to reach out to you and obviously follow both Inflection and Headwater, how can they go about doing that? What social media platform channels are both companies on?
Yeah, I think we're on most of the mainstream platforms, Twitter and LinkedIn and things like this. So I think if I remember correctly, you put these things in the notes below your podcast. But ultimately, inflectionresources.com, headwatergold.com. There's all the links on our website to find the various platforms. And same with NewQuest Capital. You can get to see some of our other ventures there as well at nqcapitalgroup.com.
Yeah. Alistair, really appreciate your time. Thank you for giving us an update. And perhaps you can come on later this year or next year, beginning next year, and give us a update on the results of some of the drilling that you've done during this year.
Great stuff, Rob. Well, thanks very much again, and we'll be back on at some point.
Yeah, great. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, please keep sharing these episodes far and wide, all over the world. Obviously, we've been speaking about assets in Australia and the US, but please keep sharing these episodes so everyone in our mining industry can understand and look at some of these projects that especially look at these projects that are happening in maybe in some of their countries that they're operating in, but also share this episode with people outside of the mining industry. We do want to obviously increase and make people aware of what we do in the mining industry, and we can only do that by sharing some content and episodes like this podcast to people outside of the mining industry. Anyway, until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.